I, proud alpha, am mated to an omega. This is not just a contrast in status, but an irony of fate. I once thought my mate would be a symbol of strength, but reality has given me a fragile omega, who even hates me to the core. Chapter 1, Finding my mate. Erica staring angrily at my beta, who was shaking like leaves. My eyes were glowing angrily as I stared at him. I couldn't believe what he just said. What the hell does he think? Does he think that he can just order me around here? I'm the alpha of this pack, but this idiotic beta of mine is not following my orders. He is questioning my orders. I'll make him pay if he dares try this again. I'd have had his head on a platter of gold if it weren't for the fact that I'm close to his mate. I don't want to hurt my friend by killing him. If you dare try to question my order, I'll kill you, not minding if you're my friend's mate. You should know your place in this pack. I screamed angrily, and the maids who were around the place scampered away in fear. But I cared not. All I want is to kill him at that moment. My wolf was going crazy on me. She hated being questioned, and she also hated the way I pardoned him after what he just said. I'm sorry. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I go get it done now, he said as he bowed his head in fear before leaving me alone, and I walked toward my room angrily. I puffed angrily as I sat on the bed while staring around the room with a look of annoyance on my face. It had been years since I had been looking for my mate, and I had searched all of the packs for him but couldn't find him. Now I'm set to go to smaller packs to find him. The beta is trying to challenge me by questioning my order. He doesn't want me to go to the smaller packs to search for my mate, but instead he wants me to stay here and rule the pack alone. I knew that he was saying all that because he had found his mate in one of the packs where we went in search of my mate. He was happy about it and couldn't keep on thanking me, but now he wanted to turn against me. He wants me to remain single without my mate. He doesn't know how I feel after all these years without my mate. I had thought that I was not given a mate, but seeing that my beta had seen his mate gave me hope. My grandfather had found his mate the moment he turned 18 years old, but he had to wait for more than 2 years for his mate to recognize him. And that was because his mate was one of the pack members. He is the one who will be in charge of the pack whenever they aren't around, and his mate will help him out. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The chariot is ready. I heard Bruce, my beta, say, and I rolled my eyes. Go get your things ready, we will leave in an hour's time, I said before cutting off the mind. I like to get my clothes ready and other things I'll need for a day. I don't know if I'll be able to find my mate, but I still had a little hope in me. I had hoped that I'd be able to find my mate. I knew that I'd have no choice other than to choose one of the laboring pack to be my mate. I knew that if a pack doesn't have an alpha, it won't be successful. But my pack had been successful without an alpha. I thought all the pack members were okay with it, but some were rebelling. They all want to be my chosen mate, and they were ready to go to any length to get that done. They are challenging my powers. They thought I couldn't live alone anymore. They are doubting me instead of trying to believe in me. I would have done even worse to them if not for my parents, not doing anything. My parents were still alive, and they would help with the pack's work when I was gone. They also weren't happy with the way the pack members were rebelling, but seeing that they were right gave them no other choice than to do the necessaries. My dad gave me the alpha position when I was 20 years old, and now I'm 24 years old. I don't like the idea of what the pack members wanted, but I knew that if I don't do what I can now, then things will be hard for me. My dad had told me that the male pack members had chosen a date for a duel to ensure peace among them all. A duel that is to determine who is the strongest among them. A duel that will determine my mate among them. And if I fail to follow the duel's procedure, then I'll lose my position as the alpha of this pack. It was said that whoever won the duel would be my mate and also the alpha of the pack. I knew that others from different packs would also be there to participate. I have received a lot of gifts from alphas who wanted to marry me. They are all after me because of what they will gain. They were all after me because they wanted to be the mate of a strong Luna, which I didn't want to be considered as. I hate the title Luna, and that is because the words only make someone weak. I knew that those who had alphas and lunas in their packs had also been prosperous. But my case is different. I don't want to be under anyone. And so I tried all my possible best not to make myself weak. I trained hard day and night to become as strong as I am now. I trained hard not to become a weak and submissive mate or Luna to any alpha. I knew that Lunas from other packs are always submissive and under an alpha. I don't want to end up like them. I don't want to be compelled to do something by someone else. I want my case to be different. I want my mate to respect me just like I respect him. I just wish my prayers would come true because I don't know what I'll do if my mate turns out to be a power-hungry werewolf. I knew that the pack members would back off from what they wanted to do immediately when they saw that I now have a mate. And I feel happy about that even if I haven't found him. Here I am on my way to one of the smallest packs in the country. And the first pack that we pass by is the Blue Moon pack, which happens to be the weakest pack in the country. The pack was hardly heard of, but I had made my decisions. I knew that coming to a small and weak pack isn't a good thing, but since I had set my mind on finding my mate, I don't mind doing anything for that. I hope you didn't inform the alpha of our coming, I asked Samuel, who nodded his head, and I turned to look at him with a heavy glare. What do I tell you about answering my question with words? I yelled at him with anger in my tone. I'm sorry. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He apologized immediately, and I climbed down from the chariot. I felt an intoxicating smell hit my nose immediately as I walked into the pack. I could smell the hint of forest wood and cherries, which filled my lungs. I heard my wolf screamed happily. Chapter 2 Jerome. I stared at the lips of my fiancée, who was moving in rhythm with each other. I couldn't help but be awed by what I saw. I couldn't believe what my eyes saw as she danced in rhythm with her voice. She danced seductively, and I couldn't help but feel aroused by her dance. It's okay, you can stop now. You tried a lot more than the last time, I said to Mabel, who smiled at me before walking up to me to sit. I was singing for her while she danced. This had always been our lives since we were born into this pack. We have been dancing all our lives. I'm Jerome Wolf, a 26-year-old Omega of the Blue Moon pack. I was born as an Omega, and my mother died after giving birth to me. I knew nobody out of my parents. My dad died years after my mom's death, and that was in a fight against rogues. A fight almost claimed my life. But luckily I was saved by my dad, who ended up losing his life to the rogues as he tried to save me, and in the end I ended up hitting my head on a stone, which made me lose my memory. I lost my memory due to an accident I had years ago. I couldn't help but feel bad about my parents, but not now. I don't feel bad anymore because I knew I wasn't at fault. I knew that it was the rogues who were responsible for all that had happened to me. And I feel great anger toward the rogues. I feel the need to kill them, but how am I going to do that? How will I be able to get revenge on my father when I can't even fight a single person? As an Omega, I have faced a lot of things, mostly being bullied by the pack members when I was a kid. I only had one friend who was there with me at all times. I had a friend who stayed by me and supported me. The friend is Vanessa. She had been through a lot because of me, and I didn't hesitate to accept us being married. I knew that it was a lame thing to think of, and I knew that the alpha wouldn't accept that. But what happened made me happy. I was told by the alpha that I could marry her and make her my chosen mate. I know that it won't be easy to do that, but I'm ready to try. I'm ready to help my friend out. Mabel is also an Omega, but her being an Omega made her mate reject her, and that left her heart broken. She couldn't bring herself to talk, and she couldn't talk for weeks. She wasn't herself, but soon she regained herself, and we became really close, and soon we started our relationship secretly. But soon the alpha knew about it, and he accepted to get us both married, saying that this is the only thing that he can do for my dad in his absence. I was glad for that because I was made to believe that my mate would reject me just like Vanessa's mate did to her. I don't want to be heartbroken like her, and I decided to move on with my life. Maybe being bullied isn't easy, but that stopped when I turned 18. when I started growing in a way that I hadn't before. I started having some physical changes in my body, and soon I was so muscular that none of the bullies dared move close to me. They stopped bullying me, and I'm glad for that. Being an Omega isn't something nice and good. It isn't appreciable. And any time I think of committing suicide, I think of my parents, who died in a bid to protect me. I feel like the only thing that I can do to repay them is to keep on living. I feel like I have a huge responsibility on my shoulders, which I'm not aware of. Javon, are you all right? I heard the voice of Mabel jolt me out of my thoughts. I'm fine. I'm just carried away. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And she offered me a genuine smile, which I couldn't help but be happy to see. I was glad that I was able to see her smile. She had the most beautiful smile I had ever seen, and I feel special for being able to see it for free. I hope you don't forget what we plan to do tonight. And I nodded my head at her. I haven't forgotten. All you have to do is be at the place at 7 p. Main the dot. I started with a dreamily smiling face. Don't worry about that. I'll be the one to be there before you even think of coming, she said as she squealed happily, her eyes shimmering with happiness. I couldn't help but feel happy that she was content with all that I had been doing. I knew that having to accept the rejection of one's mate isn't easy, but with a lot of time, I knew that the person would learn how to bottle things up. I'll have to go now. You don't have to worry. I'm about to get things ready for tonight. You will surely enjoy this more than those we had previously done, I added as I stared at her. I stood up after a while, and we both left my room, and immediately I headed towards the place we were to meet. I knew that the earlier I started with the things we would need, the better. As soon as I was close to where we were to meet, I smelt the intoxicating smell of vanilla and chocolate. I could feel my lungs being filled with the smell. I breathed in the fresh breath that fills my nose. I could feel my wolf yip ping with happiness as I did so. My body was overreacting as I did so. I felt a tingle of excitement rush through my body. I couldn't help but feel happy all of a sudden. A smile formed on my face as I stared around the place while trying to locate where the smell was coming from with the aim of following the smell. My face dropped with sadness as I heard the word, which I had dreaded hearing in my entire life. The word mate escaped from the mouth of my inner wolf, and I felt my body freeze immediately. But it wasn't long before I felt myself close to the smell. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I heard the voice of a beautifully young lady, and before I could think of anything, I felt my body become sweaty. Just get it over with and stop wasting my time. I still have a lot of preparations to make, I said as I swallowed hard while staring at the beautiful lady in front of me. She is the most beautiful lady I have ever seen, and I could notice the dangerous aura surrounding her. I knew with no doubt that she holds a high post in her pack. What should I get done with? She asked while staring at me confused, and I groaned angrily, knowing that it was all a sign of pretense. Just reject me and let me get out of here. Your presence is disgusting to me, I said as I stared at her angrily, and her mouth fell wide open at the compliment of my words. Chapter 3, Heartbroken Erica. I stared at my mate in shock, as I couldn't believe the gibberish he was saying. I was excited a moment ago to know you had found my mate, but now the happiness I felt earlier has vanished quickly before I could even stop it. I couldn't believe that I was married to an Omega. I immediately set my eyes on him after I found out. I had always thought that my mate would be someone strong who would have a high rank in his pack, but what I found out shocked the hell out of me. I couldn't believe that I was mated to an Omega, and not only that, but my mate had hated me before he found out who I was. He wanted me to reject him immediately, and by the look of things, I knew that something was off with him. He had the aura of an Omega, but he doesn't have the features of one. He looks like those warriors from a pack, but that isn't my main concern. I wanted to know the reason why he had hated me even before I got to know him. Who told you that I was going to reject you? If that's what you think, then you are wrong to think I'll reject you. I shouted at him angrily, and he flinched back with fear. And I felt bad for it. But remembering what he had said earlier made me more angry. I know that's what you will do. You will end up rejecting me. Just like my fiancée, who got rejected by her mate because she is an omega, he said with a cold face, and I felt my heart hurt. I couldn't believe what my friend just said. What did he mean by fiancé? I thought that everyone was to wait patiently for their mate, and it's in the law, all packs. But why did he choose to want to marry another person instead of waiting patiently for his mate? What do you mean by fiancé? I asked, confused. And he smiled at me for the first time since we met. I feel my heart skip immediately, and I can't help but wonder what would happen if he had smiled for more minutes. I have someone I'm willing to marry. I have someone who I planned on getting married to. And I could feel pain in my heart. I couldn't believe my ears. I could feel a pang of jealousy shooting through my body. I felt angry and sad at the same time because I couldn't bring myself to think of my mate having someone who he is willing to marry. I couldn't believe that I had waited all these years for nothing. I had waited for years to find my mate and live peacefully with him. But all this got shattered immediately after I found him. Why do you want to marry her when you know your mate is out there? I asked him with cloudy eyes. Pain was evident in my eyes, and I couldn't help but feel mad at myself and the moon goddess. I couldn't understand why I had wasted all my life in the hope of finding a partner who would be loving and caring. I had chosen to marry her because I knew a day like this would come. A day when I'd be rejected like other Omgaza. You should reject me now. I need to prepare for our date, he said as he stared at me with no emotion in his eyes. I glared angrily at him, and suddenly a smirk appeared on my face. I know what to do. I know how to deal with him. I'm glad that he hasn't married her, and that has only made me happy. I'm going to forcefully take him away with me to my pack. I'll make him pay for what he has done, and with him in my pack, no one would dare try to challenge me. I was heartbroken when I found out that he had someone he intended to marry. But I knew that the moon goddess never made a mistake pairing the both of us together. I knew that if he were to leave here and come to my house, he would forget about his fiancée. I knew that having to take him away from his mate forcefully isn't a good option. But having made up my mind on taking him to my pack, there would be nobody stopping me from achieving my aims. I have always been a strong-willed person, but seeing what was happening made my will strong. I have come this far to let him go scot-free. I won't ever allow that. Since you want to be rejected, I'll make that happen, and that won't be now. I'll do that in front of everyone. I'll do that in front of all the pack members. I started with a cold look on my face, and I saw him stagger back in shock. I don't know what to do anymore. I knew that doing this might not be accepted by my partner if I go as I have planned, but I'm ready to do anything. I'm ready to go to any extent to get that done. I walked away from the place angrily. I had followed the scent of my mate, and it led me into this bush where I had found my mate, who happens to be an omega, and I found out that he had someone he wanted to marry. All this kept repeating itself in my head as I walked forward. I walked obstinately with my heart racing. The news I heard from my friend is shocking. I had thought that he was joking in the first place, but seeing the serious look on his face, I believed that. I could feel my heart hurt while my inner wolf growled with sadness. I knew that it hasn't been an hour since I met my mate, but I have grown attached to him even though we fought the first time we met. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Where have you been? I have been looking for you, Samuel said immediately after he sighted me, and I growled at him angrily. Shut your mouth and led me to the pack. I yelled at him angrily, with my emotions coming out like wildfire. Here I am in front of the members of the Blue Moon Pack. A lot had happened in the past few hours as the Alpha was happy to see us in the pack and wasn't happy that I showed up unaware. I knew that he would have thrown a grand party for me, but I don't want that. It told him to assemble all the unmated males of the pack in a whole. I told him that I strongly believed that my friend was here and that he should find somewhere for me to stay until tomorrow. I walked from row to row of the unmated males with an unimpressed look on my face. And immediately I saw my mate, whom I had forgotten to ask for his name. How will I be able to ask for his name when all we did earlier, when we met, was scream and shout at each other? To my agent extraordinaire, Mahlen Nobe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, I said, and immediately I got close to him, and I dragged him up to the podium of the hall immediately. The hall went silent immediately. They were all waiting patiently for me to say or do something. They were all ready to watch me reject him. His face was contorted into a frown immediately after I dragged him to the podium. I want to announce to you all that I have found my mate. You can all leave. To my agent extraordinaire, Mahlen Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And soon the crowd dispersed. They weren't expecting me to accept him, but they were ready to watch me reject and disgrace him in front of the whole pack. But what they saw shocked them. I know that I'm getting close to fulfilling my wishes, and it won't be long before I get things done my way. I'll take him to my pack if he is willing or forceful. Only to mine. I have always gotten whatever I want, and now isn't an exemption. Chapter 4, Hate Your Own. I couldn't believe what happened at the PAX hall. I could feel myself getting nervous while knowing that within minutes I'll be rejected by my mate, and not only that but in front of the whole pack. I knew that having a friend might seem fun, but seeing how I'll be treated by my friend made it scary. I know that I'll be rejected because my mate won't want an omega and her mate. And not only that, I found out she was an alpha. But seeing my position, I knew with no doubt that I'd get rejected by her. I had told Mabel about it, and she was around the place after knowing I'd get rejected. She was angry that my mate had been such a ruthless and shameless woman to reject her mate in front of the whole pack. She was unhappy with the idea, but she knew that we had no choice. She was shocked when she found out that she didn't reject me. She knew that my mate was only doing that to torture me. I sighed heavily as I tried to wipe the thoughts out of my head. Here I am in the woods with the aim of setting up the things we will need for our date. I knew that I surely needed some time, and knowing that I'll soon be meeting my fiancé made me so excited. I knew that this was the perfect distraction I needed from the things going on around me. I have been the talk of the pack, but I tried hard to make things just like before. And Mabel doesn't seem to worry about it because she was only trying to find ways to cheer me up. I sat on the bench that I had set up for Mabel and me. I stared at the moon as it shone brightly, its light illuminating the woods and making the place I had set up more beautiful. I had put some light around the place, and a moonlight added to its beauty. I couldn't help but let mind wander off to my mate. I feel a deep connection with her, which I doubt was the work of the mate bond. And the more I try to ignore the connection, the stronger it gets. But once I remember why I wanted to get rejected, it will be severed. I knew that I would get rejected by my mate soon, and wandering on would not only make me think of her but also make me imagine as I can do with my mate. I knew I had to focus on Mabel, who is the only woman I will allow to have access to my heart. I knew the complications of falling in love with my partner. I knew that I'd end up getting hurt at the end and somehow get myself rejected. Jerome, I heard a voice say, snapping me out of my thoughts, and I turned to look at the direction, and I saw Mabel looking great in her overall blue gown, which had petals knitted on its sleeves, giving it a good look. You look amazing. I complimented her dress immediately, and my eyes roamed all over her body trying to register everything she had on her. The dress she wore was befitting, and it shows off all her curves. I feel my eyes linger on her curves for a while before moving to her breast. You aren't looking bad either, she said as she used her eyes to scan my body, and I let out a smile. I wore a brown shirt, which had all my BS showing. I wore black jeans that had a zipper slit that was made of zipper, and it could be easily opened and closed. The jeans were made to be tiny at the tip. I knew I looked great, but seeing Mabel compliment the clothes I wore made me blush. I walked up to her aunt before leading her to sit on the bench. You really did a great job decorating this place. It looks great, and I hope it won't get spoiled by the wind like last time, she joked as she stared around the place with astonishment. How have you been? I started awkwardly, not knowing what to say. I feel shy all of a sudden, which I haven't felt since we had always gone on dates. I knew that things happen at any time, and I knew that there is a first time for everything and everybody. I'm doing great, she replied, and suddenly I heard her stomach grumble. Feeling hungry, Care for some snacks? I asked after a while, but this time the nervousness I was feeling earlier was gone, and I offered her a smile. That will be great, she replied as she stared at the basket in front of us with a dreamily smiling face. I joked as she smiled. Let's dig in, she said immediately as poured the snacks into a bowl. I took some and was about to put it inside my mouth when I froze all of a sudden, and Mabel seemed to be aware that something was off. What's the problem? She asked worriedly as she stared at me, and I sighed heavily. I don't know, but the smell is familiar to that of my mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylan Nilben, hearts out thanks her unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And I felt her face drop, and immediately I realized my mistake. I knew I was at fault for calling my friend mine, and that is because I have no idea of her name. It's not like that. The truth is that I don't know her name, and that is the only way I can refer to her. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylan Nilben, hearts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And she puffed angrily while staring at me. You could have referred to her as the lunatic alpha. And I nodded my head in understanding. I knew that she had every right to be angry, and I knew that I'd have to make her understand. What a lovely place. Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting something? I heard my mate's voice, and I turned to look at her angrily. I would have rejected my mate, but as an Omega, I have no right to reject my mate unless she rejects me herself. Are you here to reject him now? You should get this over with and stop pestering his life, Mabel said as she glared daggers at my friend, who chuckled. I'm here to get it done, she replied with a smirk on her face. And I knew with no doubt that what she wanted to do wouldn't sit well with me. Better, Mabel said through gritted teeth while breathing heavily. I'm here to take him with me. And my eyes went round with shock. No, that ain't happening, Mabel said as she stood protectively at my front. And I also stood up while glaring angrily at her. She smiled at me, and with a click of her tongue, she left, but not before saying, nobody can stop me from doing that, and not even your petty alpha can do that. You should be ready around 5. She said and walked away. I woke up and saw that I was snuggling up to Mabel, who had wrapped her arms around me protectively. She doesn't want me to leave, just like I don't want to, and I doubt if I'll be able to escape from her at all. Mabel and I had tried escaping overnight, but it was all fruitless because she had figured out that we might try to escape. Mabel and I had decided to fight till we breathed our last. I knew that it might not work out, but I'm not ready to give up without putting up a fight. Jerome, get the hell out of your room now, it's time we leave. I heard the voice of my friend, and I woke up Mabel. We both walked out of my room with a straight face. I could feel my heart beating rapidly against its cage as I stared at my mate. She was the only one who came, and I knew that it would both of us to fight her off since rogues get trained in our pack. This seems like a gang fight. Don't worry, I'll be the only one fighting you, and you shouldn't think I'll go easy on you both. And we charged at her. She fought with the both of us, and within minutes we were on the floor with bruises all over our bodies. Anytime our skin makes contact with each other, I'll feel the spark that erupts from my skin each time, and it keeps intensifying every time we make skin contact. Take him away and lock him up in the chariot, she said and walked away. All I could feel at that moment was hate toward my mate. I couldn't believe that this would someday happen to me. I had always thought that I'd grow old and give birth to Mabel, but that dream shattered immediately when I met my mate. I felt angry, and all I could think of at that moment was to kill my friend. Chapter 5. Going Crazy. Erica, I couldn't help but feel happy that I was able to do as I had planned. I felt content as we walked out of the pack, and I could see my mate's fiancée, and I felt a pang in my heart of jealousy in my heart which I tried hard to ignore. I love you, Mabel, he said as she struggled hard to break free from the chain. Tears started dripping down his eyes and I growled inwardly. I felt hurt that my mate was telling another lady he loves her in my presence. I knew that taking him forcefully to my pack isn't a good choice, but I have made up my mind and there is no turning back. I won't return him back to his pack. I knew that something was wrong with him the moment I saw him. It felt like he was my mate, and wasn't my mate. I was put in a tight spot because his behavior made me believe that he wasn't my mate while my wolf and his scent was saying a different thing. I don't understand why he would want to reject me even without knowing who I was. I knew that there must be something that prompted him into doing that. I hate you. I hate you so much. I hate the moon goddess for pairing me with someone as evil as you. You cared about nothing else other than yourself. You are nothing but a crazy bitch. He yelled at me with tears dripping down his eyes as he started punching the chariot, and I knew with no doubt that the chariot would collapse if I didn't do something. I punched his neck lightly and he fell to the ground motionless. I stared at his sleeping figure, and I couldn't help but feel bad for what I had done to him. I knew I was wrong with the way I approached him, but remembering how he wanted me to reject him because of his fiancée made me angry. I had it in mind to kill them both with my bare hands, but I knew that I'd only cause more damage than the one that had happened. I closed my eyes and I fell asleep. Alpha, we are back home. I heard the voice of Samuel through the mind link, and I flung my eyes open, and there in front of me is my mate Jerome hovering over me with a smirk on his face. What the hell are you doing? I asked him as he towered over me with both hands placed on my neck. You won't want to try this, I warned, but he sounded deaf ears to what I said. I grabbed his hands and with just a snap I dislocated it. I knew what to do to him, but I decided to let he was my mate. You shouldn't behave like that anymore. You are now in my pack, which will be your pack from now on. I'll ask your alpha to send your files over here, I said, and he rolled his eyes while gritting his teeth angrily. She devil. He spat, and I walked out of the chariot with a frown on my face. I was happy that things might change out for good between the both of us since we are now in my pack. I was looking forward to seeing the both of us get used to each other. I know that there is just a slim chance of getting used to each other, and I'm ready to try everything possible to make things work out between them. Welcome back, Alpha. I heard the voice of Samuel's mate and I waved at her before heading toward the room where I intended to put him. Lock him up in there, and make sure he is comfortable. You should make sure he doesn't escape, I said to the pack warriors, who nodded their heads. I walked into my room and I fell on the bed while reminiscing on what had happened in the last 24 hours. I had thought that seeing my mate would be as easy as others, but it isn't. I had thought that my mate would follow me with joy, but it's different. Different thoughts were running through my head as I laid on the bed. I felt my eyes turn into that of an angry woman. Immediately I remembered what happened in my mate's pack. I can't believe that my mate would fight me because of another girl who he intended to marry. I knew that I would have reconsidered my decisions if it was then, but now I have made up my mind. I'll make him mine. There is nowhere he can go. I have waited for almost all my life for my mate, but what happened when I found her? Alpha, he's trying to escape. I heard the sound of one of the warriors who was guarding the place where room Jerome was in. I walked out of my room and headed toward the room where he was kept. I opened the door immediately and I met him scattering everything on the floor. I know what to do to you. It seems like I'm lenient towards you, right? The place you are going next would make things hard for you. And you won't be taken out of there for a while, I said angrily while glaring daggers at him. Lock him up in the cold room, I said to the guards, and they all stared at me with shock. I saw Jerome jolted up, but he tried hard not to show his fear, but I had seen through him. Man, don't you think it's dangerous? It will put his life in danger, one of the guards said. I don't care about what will happen to him. All I want is for him to be locked up in there, I said in the guard before going to carry out the order. It has been hours since Jerome had been thrown into the cold room and he has been shaking visibly. His lips were starting to turn pale. I watched as he curled up in a corner to warm himself, but just as he tried to move he fell down immediately. My heart stopped beating instantly as I watched the sight in front of me. I couldn't believe what had happened. I felt my body start overreacting and I felt worried for him. Go get the keys to the cold room, I yelled to the guard, who wasted no time in bolting away. Chapter 6. Meeting her parents. Jerome. I woke up with a pang in my head and heart. My heart felt heavy as I stared around the room I was in. All I could see was nothing but a white ceilings. I stared at the ceilings for a while with a foggy head. My heart was racing like I just ran a race of 500 meters. I could hear my heart beating rapidly. I tried hard to contain my breathing, but I couldn't. I was able to contain my breathing after a while. I tried hard to remember what brought me here, and all I could remember was my mate. I could remember the hatred I harbored for my mate. She doesn't care about anything or anybody. She brought me to her pack forcefully, and when I tried to escape she almost killed me. She told the guards to throw me in a cold room, which I thought she was bluffing about, but it's nothing like I had thought. The cold room is a place I can describe as a torture room. The room is so cold that I would have been dead if I wasn't a werewolf. I knew that I would have been able to withstand, but if I was to be a high-rank werewolf, but I wasn't. I was an ordinary werewolf for an omega. I'm the weakest of the pack and I'm a nobody. I felt tears build up in my eyes and I tried hard to stop it from falling, but to no avail. It was as if I was held up by somebody or someone. I could feel the pains of what my mate had did to me. I feel like I was paying for something I didn't do, even though I knew I did nothing to her, or do I have a connection with her before. I wallowed in pain and grief for the loss of my fiancée, who I greatly missed. I was hoping that my mate would be like that of Mabel, who rejected her immediately, but mine was different. It was as if she brought me here to torture me. How do she expect me to stay in a place and lock me up like some kind of prisoners? I have heard story about her, but I didn't know she was the one. I had overheard one of the guards, as she told to guard me, talk about her. Her name was Erica, and immediately I heard that my heart stopped beating instantly. It was as if my heart was being squeezed by an invisible hand. I couldn't believe the moon goddess could be this angry with me to pair me against someone so cruel. I don't know how to explain her attitude. I have heard lots of story about her being cruel, and it's nothing compared to what I heard. The experience I had with her was different. I have heard of how she only cared about herself. I knew that I have to do something to put an end to this. I knew I have to do something to stop her from hurting me more. I knew I have to try escaping again, even if it would cost my life. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Immediately I remembered my experience in the cold room. It was as if I was being freezed like those fishes we eat. I could now understand the plights of the fishes. They would be nothing but dead in seconds if they weren't dead before. It was as if they were made to suffer. I could know why the fishes turned stiff after some while. I could feel my heart beating with the need to escape. I could hear whispers from my wolf. My wolf also wanted me to escape from my wicked mate. I started jerking around trying to break myself off from the chains which was tied to my hand. I knew that they must be on my hands, on my legs, because if my mate saw her. I feel myself growing angry with them, mate, but I knew that there was nothing I could do about it. I knew that things have been decided, but still I'll not give up easily. I knew the implications of getting caught, but that doesn't bother me. I knew that my mate would probably be the end of me. I kept trying to wriggle free from the shackles on my hands and legs, even though it hurt. You should stay still if you don't want to get hurt. I heard a voice said, and I turned to look at the direction of the person, and it turned out to be a woman in the 60s who had a wild jacket on like those nurses in hospitals. That would be better, and I'll keep on doing it to get killed because I'll be free from the hands of my wicked mate, I said with a pause while breathing heavily. I hate to know I made it to someone like her. She is nothing but a devil incarnate, I added with a deep sigh as I stared at her from head to toe. She isn't like that. She isn't someone like that, she said, and I rolled my eyes while staring at her. You don't know her at all. I have not spent some time with her, but I knew her more than you. She is nothing but a psycho who only wanted to get all she wants and wants everybody to do as she wishes. She is my daughter, and I know what she is capable of. She must be enraged with you for something you did. She might be cruel and all that, but she doesn't hurt innocent people without a reason, she said, and I stared at her with wide eyes. I couldn't believe what was happening. She is her mother, and I have no doubt that she was going to support her daughter. I knew that mothers would want to hide their daughters' evil deeds, and she was no different. I don't know what you have done, but I hope you guys would be able to resolve all the issues you have. She is dangerous than you might think. She is dangerous when she is angry. Anyways, I'm Caitlin Woods and you are. I'm Jerome Wolf. You can't view her the way I do. You can't because you are her mother. If you are to ask of who she really is from anyone else, then you would hear you truth about them. You will not be able to change my view of her. She will always be the wicked and cruel alpha I knew. I petted angrily while staring at her. It's enough, Caitlin. You should leave him alone now. You can't change the way he look at her. Time will depend on how he look at her, I heard a deep baritone voice said. I could feel my body overreacting, wanting to submit to the person. I have not felt anything like that before. I've but felt the need to submit to anyone, even though I'm an omega, but I have to do that voluntarily. I knew that they might feel like I'm questioning their order, and I don't want that, but the man's case was different. I turned to look at the person and I saw a man who was 6 feet tall with beards covering his jaws. He had a cold look on his face despite him not being angry. From the expression on the man's face he had a playful look, but the look on his face was different. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I knew with no doubt that the man must be a man of power. I then remembered that the man had called Erica's mother and he called her name. He must be her mate, and I was glad that he doesn't want to keep on talking me into accepting her for who they knew her to be. "Who are you?" I asked as I stared at him with a questioning look on my face. I knew that he must be her father for calling Caitlin her name. "America's father." "My name is Stephen," he said, and I nodded my head at his reply. I suddenly felt cold all of a sudden. I started shivering and soon it came to Caitlin's notice. "What is happening to him?" Stephen asked with a worried look on his face. "I don't know," she replies worriedly. I could feel my eyes getting cloudy. I could feel my whole body in pain. It was as if I was thrown back into the cold room again. And this time the experience is more worse than before. "I'll have to sedate you. Your body is not well and your cells are overreacting. You should be fine within hours. I can't say it for hours, but you will not feel the pains like you would do when you were unconscious," she said, and I nodded, having no choice but to allow her to do that. "Just get it done," I yelled with veins popping out of my head. And before I could complete my word I could feel something entered my body, and before I could say Jack I fell into oblivion. Chapter 7. Angry. I sat down at the training ground with a frown on my face. I couldn't believe what had happened. My body was overreacting to something I didn't know about. I feel worried about something or someone whose name I don't remember. I feel like I have offended someone, but I didn't know the person. I have not felt like this before in my entire life. I have never cared about or worried about someone or something like this before. It's like I have greatly offended the person. I could feel nervousness seeping through my body. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "I'm here," I heard Victoria's voice say, and I turned to look at her with a smile. I was glad she could make it here. I was hoping we could both have a duel. I want to blow out my steam, and I hope she does too. "I called you here because," I was saying before I was cut off by Victoria. "You called me here because you want to have a duel with me. Wait. Just like cold times when you are confused and don't know what to do," she said hastily as she stared at me with a knowing smirk. And I nodded my head. It has been long since we last had a duel, and I must admit that I miss it. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." And she smiled as she stared at me. "What are you waiting for?" she asked as she stared at me with a tingle of excitement. "Let's get started. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." And I stood up with a smile. "Don't go easy on me because I won't. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." And she rolled her eyes. "As if you can do anything to me," said Victoria as she charged at me with a smirk plastered on her face. I dodged her advances, and I punched her stomach. She dodged the punch, as she lunged her legs at me, which I dodged easily. I slid on the ground and did a sweeping kick, which she dodged by leaping up lightly. I took my stances again, and I stared at her menacingly with a dangerous glare on my face. She charged at me again, but this time with a fake punch, which I dodged, and before I knew it, she punched my stomach. "Look who is talking about not going easy on me, you just got your butt whipped by me," Victoria said with a taunting look on her face, and I smirked. "I'm afraid to judge, let's just get started. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." And with that, I rushed toward her. I did a high flip while swinging my hands and legs to hit her face, but she managed to dodge it at the last minute. But my legs hit her nose a bit. Enough of the chit-chat. "Victoria, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And I dashed toward her while ducking left and right, while punting her body. She dodged all my advances, but she didn't know what was coming her way. I gave her a punch in the face and did a bicycle kick, landing it on her face again. I stopped immediately, and I walked up to her worriedly. Her face had been cut, and blood was seeping out of it. I stared at her worriedly, not knowing what to do. I knew that the cut would heal soon, but I wasn't happy with what just happened. I'm sorry. I don't mean to hurt you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And she rolled her eyes while cleaning off the blood. I looked at the cut on her face, which is now healed, but I couldn't take it off my mind. I couldn't believe I did this to my best friend, and it's all because of my damn boyfriend, whom I have been thinking about. After the incident at the cold room, I told the guards to take him to my mother for him to get treated, but I haven't heard from my mother, and that's likely because I have blocked everyone out of the mind, link. It's now healed, so you shouldn't think too much about it, Victoria said as she sat down on one of the stools in the training ground. The whole place is vacant because the time for practice is over and we are now in the evening. I knew that no one could come to this place right now, but still, I felt like someone might just walk in on us without announcing it, and I felt nervous. We need to talk, Victoria said, and I sighed heavily before nodding my head, urging her to continue. What have you done about your mate's issue? She asked with a questioning look on her face. Nothing. Do you think I have time to be forcing myself on him? He had made it clear that he loved his fiancée, Mabel, or whatever she is called. I only brought him here to see if he might have a change of heart. You don't have to worry about him. I planned on sending him off back to his pack after a week or so, I said as I stared at the sky. A sick smile was plastered on my face. All I could do was think of what would happen next. I have always wanted to accept my partner, and seeing him in the first place, I wanted to accept him, but seeing the way he behaved, I still wanted him to be part of my life. He forced me to be as I was to other people to him. I was willing to show him what I'm capable of doing, but he made me show it. I have never been hostile towards any of my close relatives unless needed, and seeing that he wasn't ready to accept me made me enraged. I wanted to make him mine the moment I saw him because I was attracted to him. He wanted me to reject him at all costs because he was in love with another woman. It hurt me to realize that, and I knew that the only way to hurt him was by taking him away from Mabel. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I did not care about what people say. I myself knew that I wouldn't be able to release him because I had made it my priority to make him suffer and hurt like I did. We both know that you aren't releasing him soon, and all I'll say to you is that you should be lenient toward him because you might end up killing your mate in the end. And she left me sitting in the training center. I was sitting there wallowing in thoughts for minutes, but that was interrupted by Victoria, who ran toward me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You need to come see this, I heard her say with a wavering voice. What is the problem? I asked with a creased eyebrow, and she sighed impatiently. And I felt my heart stop beating instantly. I could feel my heart beating rapidly and heavily after a while. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat. I could feel my whole body get sweaty all of a sudden. I felt a gush of emotions wash through me, and I felt cold suddenly, but it was fine within a few seconds. I could feel the way the blood was being pumped in my heart. What happened to him? I asked as I stood up while staring at her with a worried look plastered on my face. He is, she was saying, but I cut her short. What happened to him? Is he all right? Tell me, Victoria, I demanded, and she sighed heavily while fidgeting with her fingers. He's sick, and your mom said she can't say if he will be able to survive it. She dropped the bombshell, and I stared at her with shock etched on my face. I couldn't believe what she just said. I knew that throwing him in the cold room is cruel and wicked, but I was so angry that I ordered him to be thrown in there, and not only but I let him stay in there for too long. I didn't think of what that could do to his double system, But all I cared about at that time was making him pay for trying to escape. I ran toward the hospital where my mother was working. She was the one I took Jerome to. I rushed into the ward, where I met my nurse operating on him. "Mom, is he going to be okay?" I asked my mom, who didn't reply but only glared at me angrily. "You are asking such a question when you are the one responsible for this. I don't believe this is the person I raised you up to be," my mom said, and I looked at her angrily. I couldn't believe she would say something like this. I couldn't believe she didn't trust me. She knew that I couldn't do a thing to him without a reason. "Do you actually think that I'll keep quiet after what you just said? You don't know anything about what just happened. And you are judging me already," I shouted angrily as I stared at my mom. Chapter 8, Heartbroken Erica. I couldn't believe that my mom would say something like this. What she said sent me off the edge. How dare she try to accuse me of something I didn't do? She knew that I would not do such a thing, but she agreed to it because he is my mate. Does she know what he has done to me? She should know what it warranted my doing so. "Don't talk to your mum like that, young lady," my dad said in a deep, baritone voice that carries authority. I felt myself wanting to submit to his voice, but I was able to override his tone. "You should know what he did before questioning me. If it were you, what would you do? I know you would do worse than I did. How would you feel if my dad was telling someone that he loved her, and not only that you were there? How would you feel if my dad had wanted to reject you the instant he met you because of the so-called girl he loved? What would you do? You can't understand a thing because you haven't experienced it." I yelled at her, and I stormed out of the room in anger. I almost pushed Victoria away, but she happened to see it coming. I walked into my room, and I closed the door with a loud bang behind me. I locked the door with tears dripping down my face. I closed my eyes, letting the tear drop down slowly. I could taste the salty liquid in my mouth, and I knew that it was my tears. My heart was in pain as this was happening. I could feel my eyes getting cloudy due to the tears that were blocking my view. I felt my throat become dry. Most people might think that I'm strong as I portrayed myself. And I am. I am strong in many places. But with my family, I feel weak. I'm jovial with my parents and friends. And most especially, I can't bear to argue with my parents. And when I do, I go directly to my room. I will cry for hours. And I won't talk to anyone. I have been trying to get rid of this habit, but it isn't working. I don't want people to know that I cry whatever serious argument with my parents, especially the pack members. I knew that they would think I'm weak and all sorts of things, and I'm not ready to let them think lowly of me. I have always wished to have a lovely and caring partner, but that changed the moment I met him. All my anger and frustration were directed at him because he doesn't want me. I wanted him. And I knew that there was no way he was going to approve of me. But I knew there was nothing I could do. It has been hours now since I was in my room. And by the time I left my room, it was night time. I have made up my mind to apologize to my friend. I'll let him go since he doesn't want me. I knew that keeping him here was not going to do me any good. I knew that he wasn't happy here. And I'll let him go after he recovers from the effects of the cold room. I'll let him go so peace can reign. I'll choose a worthy person who can rule alongside me. I'm not going to let the person into my life. I walked toward the room where he was kept, and I saw my mother seated on the chair. She stood up immediately when she saw me enter the room, and I looked away from her with guilt in my eyes. My eyes caught sight of Jerome, who was laying peacefully on the bed. I could tell that I had done him something bad, which I felt guilty of. I feel guilty for making him like this. I knew I was responsible, and it only increased the guilt I was feeling. My heart was thrown into a feast of sadness, knowing that I had made a terrible mistake. I'm ready to let bygones be bygones. I'll let him go, and I'll focus on the bright future. Sorry for what I said earlier. My mom apologized, and I rolled my eyes. I knew that this was going to happen after I told them what he did. I have always cried whenever I knew that nobody knew what I was going through. And what I did, I felt angry. My anger with my parents always comes with tears, which they don't know about. I hope you don't go to your room to cry like you always do. My dad asked as I turned to look at him with a shocked look on my face. How do you know that? I asked with an embarrassed look on my face. I knew that was your habit whenever we had an argument. My dad replied, and my cheek turned red. Why aren't you saying anything? My dad asked, looking at my mom, who had become silent since the time we started our conversation. She was staring at me with a long look on her face, and I knew with no doubt that she wanted to say something to me. I knew what she wanted to say to me, and I'm not going to let her persuade me. She was going to tell me to go easy on him, not knowing what I had planned. You don't have to worry. I will let him leave the pack once he's back on his feet. You don't need to talk me into anything. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And I could hear her gasp. I knew that what I was going to do was going to cost me my happiness. But seeing him happy is enough. I'll not let my emotions get in my way anymore. How are you going to lead this pack? My dad asked as he stared at me, and I could feel his eyes bore holes in my body. It was as if he could read through me. The fighting challenge that the pack members want to organize would do the trick. And not only the pack members are eligible to fight, and the dual others from another pack can join. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And my mom stared at me in shock. No, you don't have to do that. My mom pleaded with moisture in her eyes. This was something she always does whenever she wants me to do something for her. But I'm not ready to fall for that. I'm not going to let her tears force me to do something I don't want to do. I have always cheerfully done everything she asked of me, but I'm not ready to do that now. I have made my decision, and moreover, he is a fiancé and will be getting married in a few months. I will only stop him from being happy if he is here in my pack. You would be better off without me, I said with a gloomy voice. It's a hard decision for me to make, but I'm ready to do that for his happiness, and there is no way I'm accepting him back. If he decides to stay here to be with me, I'll reject that. I'll send him away to his so-called fiancée, whom he loves. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And they both looked at me with shock. I knew that they were not expecting my last word, but I have said my words, and there won't be any going back. I won't go back on my words. I'll see to it. Mum, Dad, it's already night time. You can both leave. I'll take it from here. Moreover, I'm the one responsible for this, and I have every right to right my wrongs, I said with a sad smile on my face. Good night. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My dad said as he signaled for my mom to follow him. I looked around the room with a sad smile plastered on my face. I knew what I was doing wouldn't make me happy, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make my partner happy. I don't want to be the reason why my friend is sad. I carried a stool, and I sat on it. I want to watch him sleep, and I want to make sure he is okay. This is the only thing I can do for him now. The stool was close to his bed, and I felt my heart start beating rapidly as I stared at his face. I fell asleep after a while with my head on the bed. I woke up to the movement of things. I felt a movement in my hair. It was as if my hair were being ruffled by someone. And with that, I opened my eyes. I stood up suddenly, and soon, I stood up, and as I was raising my head, I felt my head hit something, and I heard a groan. All the incidents that happened came rushing into my head, and I looked around and noticed that I was still in the ward. I was laying peacefully and more comfortably earlier on Jerome's lap. My eyes were round with shock,